Kia ora, my name's Marketi Edwards and I am a senior reporter with Native Affairs on Māori television. It's a current affairs program. Stories are mainly in English, but we also do stories in Māori. A good story for Native Affairs is it's got to be compelling. People will want to watch it if they can relate to something that's been said in the story, or relate to a person, or relate to an event that's happening. How they relate to that, I think, is how the interviewer talks to the people and how the talent come across. They tell us that the first 20 to 30 seconds of a story on a current affairs show is the most crucial time to draw an audience in. So when we cut and edit our stories, we try and have a high impact in that first 30 seconds of our story so that people are really engaged. I think people can relate to and respond to some kind of unfairness. So I think if you're trying to sell a story to the media, talk to them about things, why should people be interested in the story? Because this person was treated unfairly. This person was discriminated against. This person was only 10 years old and this happened to them. Or this person is 80 years old and this has been happening to them all of their life. Some kind of element of unfairness, I think, certainly makes people sit up in their seat and think, I want to know more. It's about talking to your audience about how this issue will particularly affect them. Everyone probably has somebody that they know or are related to that may have suffered at some stage from some kind of mental illness, and everyone's got a story to tell. Without wanting to use overly emotive language or to exaggerate the situation, I think Native Affairs tries to portray the situation as it is without over-sensationalising the particular issue. I like stories about people who manage to get themselves out of a situation and they've gone from bad to good. But not all good stories have happy endings, unfortunately, and we don't necessarily just choose stories that have that happy ending. I like to do stories about Indigenous peoples and how they manage their lives and how they improve their lives. I like to do stories that are fun. Someone who's come from a small, poor area and they've managed to achieve, despite the odds. Those kind of stories almost have a kind of a heroism to them. Producers are only able to give you so much time to research a story, and if you have to do a lot of the background work to get there, then that story may not go to air. We're normally given 2 or 3 days to film a story, another 2 or 3 days at the maximum to actually watch our footage and start scripting, and another 2 days to sit down with an editor and actually cut that story. Journalists often don't have time to go and get the facts and figures that are required for a story. If an organisation is able to provide us with that information, that's great. If they're able to provide us with experts on a particular area who are respected for their opinion and their knowledge, that's great. And if they're able to provide us with contacts of people who have maybe suffered from some kind of mental illness, that's great, because for us that's the hardest job, to get people who are happy to talk on camera about what's happened to them, about their experiences. If comments are made in the media about people with mental illness or some research comes out, it's always good, I think, for your organisation to have experts ready to make a comment on that. And those are the sorts of stories that daily news programs would use. For Māori television, for Te Kaya, if you've got people who can speak in Māori or people who've worked with Māori, or people who are Māori mental health experts, that's even better for us. Obviously the story will focus on how it particularly affects Māori people. Mental health is a huge issue for the Māori community, and we do need to be doing more stories on mental health. Well, I think that journalists should have their cell phones on 24/7. I mean, I know myself, if I'm in the middle of an interview or driving, I don't answer, but I'll always get back to somebody. We need to be prepared to answer the phone and take a call on a story, any time. I mean, emails work for us. If you've got some quite lengthy information that needs to be given out, emails followed by a phone call is probably the best way to, to try and keep plugging away at journalists. If you're putting out press releases which are informative and provide journalists with an opportunity to talk to real people as well as to the experts, that certainly would make a journalist's job a lot easier. A lot of our stories always reflect back on the role of the whānau, the extended family, the sub-tribe, the hapu and the iwi, the tribe. For mental health, I guess, the extended family has always been considered of the utmost importance in helping people to get well again. Certainly if you have an individual who's quite happy to talk about their illness and they have support and help from their extended family, that's great for us. If we're going to interview someone, we'd want to know how their extended family fits into the picture and how the marae that they come from fits in if they affiliate strongly to a marae. 10 to 15, 20 years ago, if Māoris were protesting or occupying a piece of land, all that would be reported would be the violence that occurred from that, the scuffle with the police. But they wouldn't actually talk to the occupiers about why they were unhappy, why they were occupying the land. The violent stories that come out in the media are stories that go through the police as well, and so maybe a lot of the media are getting these stories through the criminal courts. People who are suffering from mental health issues and who have not had any violence associated with their behaviour, if those are the people that you put up front in the media and those are the people that are willing to talk, that would go a long way, I think, in reducing that stigmatisation, but also, you know, getting experts to talk about that as well. Talk about there is not necessarily a coalition between violence and mental health. I think the more that mental illness is talked about in the community and via the media, I think more likely it is that the negative stigma and stereotyping that's associated with mental illness goes away. I would hope that they would see Māori television as a good option to come and talk to us. I feel that we do our best to ensure that people's viewpoints are fairly represented and that we don't try and misuse what they say or misinterpret what they say. Whether we agree with what they're saying or not, you know, everyone gets a fair hearing.